Hey, welcome to another episode of the Buy Your Side podcast, the property podcast to help you make smarter property buying decisions. My name is Michelle May, and I am the principal of Michelle May Buyers Agents here in Sydney. And as you can see, for those watching the YouTube videos, I am not alone today. We've got Jason Ratcliffe, the Wellbeing Surveyor, back with us because after our last episode, we continued talking about the great things you can do to improve your well-being in your home. And so we thought we'd come back for another episode. And this time we are going to be discussing plants and foliage in and around your house and how that can actually improve or actually be to the detriment to the health in your home. So hi, Jason. It's so great to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Hi, Michelle, and hi, everyone. Yeah, I absolutely love speaking with you. I think it's fantastic, and I think the energy you bring is amazing. And it's a great joy to be on your podcast. So thank you very much for having me back.
Thank you. It's another sunny day in the UK. I can see the sun behind you there.
You missed a couple of rainy days before, but
Oh,
yes, it is. It is a. We'll take it. Yeah, it's a sunny day today.
and I was just complaining about how cold it is in Sydney. It was literally 16 degrees today, and you mentioned that's usually like a sunny day in, in Blighty. But I remember those
Absolutely.
days well. But
Yeah,
like we
most
last
people will be on the beach
discussed,
today.
I know, but like we last discussed, I swear Australian houses are some of the coldest I've ever lived in. So but hey, I just got to toughen up, I guess. But talking about plants, now I actually created this little setup for you behind me because I am a huge plant lover. I love plants, different kinds, and given how expensive flowers are here in Australia, and being Dutch as well, growing up with flowers always in the house, for a few pennies, my mum would pick up the most beautiful, gorgeous arrangements from the markets. Flowers here are definitely a luxury item. You really don't buy much for $100 when you're sending flowers as a gift, which is a lot of money. And of course, they wilt so quickly. So I end up filling my house with plants. But I can safely say that I am not as green fingered as I would like. But I don't really know much about plants as such. I buy with my eyes. If I see a pretty one, I take it home from the garden center and I've spent many dollars there. And then if I'm lucky, they live with me for a while. But yeah, unfortunately, I've butchered quite a few in my past. So let's start with outside of your home, like you've got a bit of a courtyard, a balcony, a garden, where would you start as a homeowner?
Yeah, I mean that is a really great question. I think no matter what outside space you have, there's always room for some kind of plant, and I think that it can work in very different ways. So if you have a small courtyard or a patio area or a balcony, you may want to fill it with a bit more color, a bit more kind of rich smells, so you can get some smelly plants, some nice smelly plants,
Yes.
which
Jasmine,
can
that kind of thing.
so you can have things like lilies and things like that, which are really nice but toxic. So be careful, which can really help. But they need to be in a specific area. You can't just have them kind of out. They're very susceptible to weather conditions. So it's very important to make sure you're keeping an eye on these. But things like if you're in an area which you are, I suppose, in a noise pollution area. So if you're kind of right next to a road, right next to a train track or airport, things like that, thicker, denser, more all-round plants, which are very hardy, are really, really worthwhile. So you've got different shrubs, but then also you have evergreen plants, which will do absolute wonders. So any kind of full foliage, evergreen, things like ferns and all of these kind of hardy. You don't really need
Yeah.
to be green fingered type approach is the best way. To be honest with you.
Well, I mean, here obviously we've got a lot of bamboo that you can grow like very quickly and
Yeah,
provide a great privacy screen as well as noise um, sort of protection as well as they create their own noise as well, like with the wind, that's kind of
absolutely.
rustling, which is
Bamboo is
quite
amazing for that.
pleasant.
Yeah,
Yeah, but you've
it's
got to be
rapid.
very
Right? It's
careful that it
growing.
doesn't overtake, right, the back garden. um, I remember when I lived in the UK, Leylandis, is that how you pronounce them? The big conifers, they're huge, huge, where there would be neighboring disputes about how high they're allowed to be, because there's
Yeah, yeah.
definitely rules and regulations around that. So you got to really do your research when it comes to that. But tell me, the lilies, they're toxic, they're poisonous
They
for
are,
humans
yes.
as
So
well as.
again, it's so important to make sure that you get the right plants for your home. So
Mm,
things like lilies, if you've got small children, if you have pets, they're not the best, but also they're not. You have to be a little bit more green fingered with something like a lily because
okay.
they'll die in my house if I'm honest. Uh, I'm not green fingered, but what we consider biophilic design, so with plant enhancements, is amazing. But what's behind you, for example, is a pothos.
This one,
Yeah,
right?
which are awesome. I have those in my house. I've got them in my office, everywhere, because they're really hardy. They don't need a huge amount of light or attention, but they're really great at being able to get things like benzene and formaldehyde and all these nasty air pollutants out of your home or office. But then you have other things such as spider plants and snake plants, which they're quite decorative as well because they're not
Mm,
just the standard. They don't flower necessarily. But they look quite spindly, so they give a bit more of a, I suppose, a contrast to your home or your
yeah.
office, which is great. But then you have other things that are more pet friendly. So you've got kind of aloe vera plants and things like that, which obviously have medicinal purposes as well. So normally, if you get a burn or something like that, you can kind of put aloe vera on it. I'm not a medical expert. By all means, if you get a burn, go to the doctors. But
Yeah. Do not stop going to the hospital
yeah,
because
absolutely.
Jason said
Jason said I rubbed an aloe vera plant on me and I'll
if
be
your
fine.
finger's
No.
falling off, please go and see the GP.
Absolutely. But no, I think one of my favorites is a cheese plant. I absolutely love cheese plants. I think they're
Cheese
really,
plants. I'll have to I'll
yeah.
have to look that up.
So they're the big plants with big leaves and they can grow really tall. They're amazing indoors. They don't need a lot of light or attention, just an
Yeah.
occasional water. But I think this is it. It really depends on your home, your how much space you have, because things like a ZZ plant, for example, which is quite a cool looking plant that's quite upright, so it doesn't necessarily spread outwards. It can be quite good in a home that has some nice high ceilings, for example, or you've got again pothos plants behind you that are more hanging draping plants which work really well in kind of cottages or low ceiling heights if you've got an apartment, for example. So there's all sorts of different types of plants that you can have, but again, it's so important to make sure that they are right for you because you can be so disheartened. When I first started getting into having plants around, I literally did probably what everyone does and goes, "Oh, amazing! Plants are good for you. Right, let's go to the plant shop and just buy loads of plants. That's
Yeah.
great." And then you spend probably £500 on them, and then most of them die because you don't look after them or don't understand, or even worse, they start rotting and or they bring in kind of flies and things like that, which then start smelling, and then obviously you have a massive negative impact because you're going to have rotting plants and things in your house and
Yeah.
lots of flies. But flies come with any plant, really, if you have open soil, things like that. So it's kind of like having deterrence and understanding that. So again, kind of lean away from the chemicals and things that might harm you. You can get kind of those sticky pads which you can just put in the plant pot, which it does the job, and it doesn't then affect you and family and occupants or pets and things like that. But things like rubber plants are good because they're really good at kind of filtering the air, but also they're really hardy because they're obviously the name of them, rubber plants, they're quite rubbery. But things like that, they'll need kind of dusting every once in a while because they've got big kind of leaves, which they look great. They cover a lot of area, but then obviously they'll be a bit dusty. So again, it defeats the object of having. Having a plant in your home that is then going to potentially kick off dust allergies. So
Yeah, yeah,
it's
exactly.
crazy stuff that you don't necessarily think of.
So here's a few things I've heard, and you can tell me whether they're myths or they're true. Just off the top of my head, do most plants die from overwatering as opposed to underwatering? Is that
Yes.
a myth, or is
No,
that
that is
true?
true. I think the thing is a lot of plants, especially the ones you can have indoors, like the ones we've mentioned already, are quite hardy plants that don't necessarily need a lot of watering. They might need kind of maybe once a week, once every other week, depending on where you are in the world, depending on kind of if you're near an area such as the coast, where you're going to have a lot more, I suppose, atmospheric moisture that it can absorb and things like that, or if you're in a lot drier areas. So, yeah, I think the problem is people then kind of go, oh, I need to water this plant every day, for example, or they water them at the wrong time of day. So if they're in direct sunlight, for example, and it's the middle of summer, and you water your plants and get the leaves wet, and that can cause a lot of damage as well. So, again, reverting back to that kind of rotting and flies and stuff, like overwatering can cause those types of issues as well, which is it makes it
Yeah,
smell, it makes you have loads of again, reverting back to flies in your home.
yeah,
So it's
yeah,
important. And most plants, well, before you buy them, they've got the labels in as well, which will tell you kind of how hardy they are, where you should have them, if they should be in a light area, a shaded area, things like that. But then, to go kind of reverting back to the outside plants as well, things we kind of mentioned about evergreens. So, you're looking at things like evergreen oaks and eucalyptus trees, stuff like that, and bamboo. Bamboo is a fantastic one because exactly that, it makes that sound, its own resonating sound, which can then counteract any kind of noise pollution, things like that, breaks that sound waves up. But just having dense foliage and different heights, so you can have taller plants and then kind of smaller plants integrated with some shrubs, maybe even delving a little bit more into landscaping rather than plants. But if you had, say, a water feature as well, just to kind of bring that natural sound waves through, which can potentially help break up the sound and also the air, the air pollutants from a busy airport or a busy motorway, for example. So it then, all of those can then filter. And if you've got things like, depending on your home and your budget, if you can do things like earth banks around your home as well, they're fantastic. So
what are
basically
they?
like
What
a
is
pile
banks?
of earth. So if
Yeah.
you were landscaping and you had loads of soil that you didn't know what to do with, you can actually put them into earth banks, which, because they're quite dense, or they're very dense, they can absorb those sound waves to help kind of reduce the sound in the noise pollution in your home and in your garden. But then also, those are really, really good for being able to then plant in, because then you can then have a sound bank with shrubs and evergreens on top, and it's like a super barrier for any kind of noise
Hmm.
pollutant.
Hang on. So you're talking about creating artificial hills in a
Mm.
way. So
Yeah,
dikes. I'm familiar with dikes and dams.
yeah,
Being Dutch, we have a few where I come from. Okay. Obviously, that requires a fair bit of a garden. Most of us in Sydney have small blocks, Victorian terraces on 112 square meters of land kind of thing. Um, there is, I mean, when I look at properties, I always look at the trees in the gardens, because there are quite a few trees that have invasive roots that can really mess with,
yes.
the sewage, but also the foundations of your home if they're too close. Have you got any suggestions in terms of distance from your home for things like, even like bamboo, for example, or isn't there a noxious one that has roots that are almost impossible? Once it's in your garden, it's almost impossible to get rid of. Like, it's illegal to plant it as such.
Do
Um,
you mean Japanese knotweed?
that's the one. Yes. That's
Yeah.
the one.
So in the UK, it's a bit of a bizarre legislation around it because it's not illegal to have it in your property or on your
Right.
ground, but it is illegal for it then to encroach onto somebody else's land.
Right.
So yeah, so there's a bit of a grey area really, but you don't want it anyway. It's not a great plant to have at all. It was actually introduced into kind of residential areas through landscapers and things like that. It was actually actively promoted as something that was aesthetically pleasing, easy to grow, quick to
Yeah.
grow. So yeah, that's why it was introduced originally. But yeah, it's exactly right. I think it's the root system is really where the issues lie, and you know trees. It really depends on the size of the tree, the type of tree, but again the type of land, the subsoil it's in. If you've got things like clay subsoil, which I believe is a big thing, especially kind of around Sydney as well. You've got seasonal variations in the subsoil, so it can
Mm.
what it means is it can expand and contract at a rapid rate and quite
Yeah.
significantly. So if you get a sudden dry spell, it can then cause it to shrink, and if it then you get a sudden downpour, it will then
Mm.
expand quite quickly, which then causes that can cause a lot of structural issues. So if you've got
Yeah.
a tree, for example, as in quite close proximity, so say within 10 meters, for example, of your home, and you suddenly go, oh, I'm going to cut that down. If you do it at the wrong time of year and you don't have the right expertise to do that, what tends to happen is then all of that water that's reserved in that tree then dumps straight back into the ground, and then it can have a massive expansion on the subsoil, which that in itself can actually cause pretty nasty structural movement to properties. So it's a
Ah.
very careful type of approach that you need because root systems typically, yes, are going onto drainage. You know, they cause fracturing, and if you've got things like clay pipework, for example, they normally have mortar fillet at the junctions to join the different sections. That tends to then cause fracturing and erosion of those areas, which then causes the foul drainage to then leak and seep out into the subsoil. Yeah, it's pretty
Mm.
gross. So you've
Yeah.
got then contamination issues, but then
Yeah.
also you've got something called a tipping point. So they may not have, if you don't look at your drains and don't have them checked regularly, especially if you've got trees around, and if it's a Victorian property as well, because they'll probably have clay pipework, which is then susceptible to this. You may not see any issues at all. Then you may go on holiday for a couple of weeks and then come back and half your house has moved, and you think, well, how has that happened? But it may well have been kind of 20,
Yeah.
30, 40 years of fractured pipework that's then caused erosion of the subsoil.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, there was a tipping point where it's gone, oh, okay, perfect weather conditions or too much subsoil. And then all of a sudden, you have a shift within your foundations of your property. And then that causes movement. So, and it can be
Yeah.
quite significant all of a sudden. So,
Yeah.
it's really
Yeah.
important
Well,
to keep on top of.
I mean, I'll tell you a story. My colleague Nicola had a client, and they were looking in the inner city area of Sydney called Surrey Hills, which lots of teeny tiny Victorian terraces, old properties, little courtyards kind of thing. And initially, she flagged the tree in the backyard. It was a native tree. I can't remember what it was, but it was a native tree. And in Australia, we're very protective about our native trees, and rightly so. So you normally can't get them cut. Uh, and if you do need to get it cut, you need special permission, and it's a really lengthy process that can take many years. It can go all the way as the whole High Court, Land and Environment Court. And so we got the arborist in, because she was a bit concerned about the roots, that some of the tiles in the courtyard were already moving. And so the arborist comes and goes, well, yeah, I can see that you're concerned about that one, but actually there's an even bigger tree, native tree, all the way across on a different property, like two or three properties across. He's like, that's going to be the bigger problem. And he's like, if it was me, I would walk away from this. And we did. because we thought it was one thing, but it was actually another, and
Yeah.
both would have been a problem down the track. And given how difficult it is to sort of fight that with council, even if you've got problems with your property, it was best to walk away.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely something that if you are looking to purchase a property, don't just look at the house, look at the trees in your garden as well, and the neighboring gardens that may be an issue, for sure. Hey, and so another myth, I want to see if that's something that you can help me with.
Myth
Um,
busting.
myth busting. So I've heard that you also need to wipe down the leaves of your plants, like dust them, and two part to that. You're best like to put them in a shower and sort of douse them so you're dusting and watering them at the same time. Is that a good idea? Is it needed? Is it necessary? Dusting the leaves
I mean, it
inside for
depends on how
inside
much
plants, I
effort you
mean.
want to go through. Yeah, I think dusting leaves, yes, it's not just a myth; it is true. Like I mentioned about the rubber plant, the ones with the bigger leaves, so you've got more surface area. They will, because they're a surface. Even if they're a natural surface, they are still a surface, so they will need dusting because you're going to get skin particles, all sorts of things, pollutants, and everything. Naturally, physical pollutants actually then entering and laying on there, such as your dust, and pollen and things like that can also get in and attract to these areas. But also, if it's wet, because you're watering your plants and you're spraying your leaves, naturally then that then attracts dust and it can trap dust easier. So it's actually then almost counterintuitive to water your plants, which sounds silly. So because obviously it means that it's attracting dust, but obviously you still need to water your plants, right? So what you would do if you've got smaller plants and you want to water them, it'd probably be a good idea to take them into your shower. But most people have bigger plants, such as your cheese plants, things like that. And if you've got lots of plants, who wants to then move all of their plants and give them a shower? You just look strange, right? So I
You
think
don't have to tell anybody.
so I think just having a wet cloth. You don't need to have,
Yeah.
when we say dusting, it does not mean polishing. So we're not using polish, we're not using cleaning products, we're not using anything like that. Just have some water and a towel or something like that, or some kind of cloth, and then just gently wipe over your plants every once in a while. You could do it once a week just to keep on top of it. But yes, you do need to dust your plants. Yes.
Okay. Okay. I've been doing the right thing, Jason, but I have been chucking them in the shower all together, all their friends, and just psh, water, and then leave them to
I mean, bear in mind
drain.
that each plant will require different watering schedules. So,
Uh,
you know,
there is
yeah.
that.
Yeah, and
Fair
again,
enough.
it depends, because if you put them in a shower and then you end up then putting them straight back into direct sunlight, that can then kill them as well. So that's not a good idea.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're a plant killing person like me, what's the best like starter off plant? Is it this one? This
Yeah,
is the
yeah,
one?
absolutely. So those are really great. Anything that is quite hardy and doesn't need a lot of watering and care and attention.
Mm.
Your things like your spider plants, your snake
Mm.
plants, your ZZ plants, all of these types.
Yeah.
They're
Is
they're
ZZ
they're
plant, is
really
that the same as the mother-in-law tongue or whatever they call it? This one?
no. So the mother-in-law one is
This one?
different. Yeah, that's a little bit different. That's also called a snake plant as well.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
which is yeah, they
Uh,
are awesome. I love snake plants
I was
because
told
you
it's indestructible.
they
But
pretty much
let's
are.
see.
Yeah, yeah. Even for me, it thrives and it's great. But that's, yeah, just some good soil. Get it planted properly in the right area. Just leave it
Mm.
alone. You don't need. I
Yeah.
think over pampering plants is the way to kill them.
Yeah.
So yeah, things like snake plants, spider plants, all these types are great. You can also get albino cheese plants, which are more expensive because of their aesthetic appeal. They're normally more lighter in color. So hence the albino name. But yeah, they're fantastic kind of plants that you can have. Lilies, things like that. If you're more green fingered, absolutely amazing. But things like aloe vera, they just tend to do their own thing. So yeah, just kind of water them when it's pretty much dry soil, and then you're good, really.
Mm. And final question: has anybody in the history of the world ever managed to make one of those potted, herb plants from the supermarket survive longer than 2 weeks? Or are they just meant to die? Because I tell
Yeah.
you why, I love, oh, my cat's touching my computer. I love cooking and I love the fresh herbs and I keep falling for that trap. But if I go to like a, what is it called, a garden center, is the basil there going to be more hardy or
I
not?
would probably say yes, because when you've got garden centres, typically you've got people that want to, obviously, their whole brand is around delivering good quality products.
Yeah.
So if you end up having plants that are going to die very quickly, you're probably not going to be in business very long.
Mm.
But from a supermarket perspective, then it's more of a just a byproduct kind of, yeah, oh, here you go, yeah, we sell plants
It's a
type
gimmick,
approach.
isn't it? It's
It
a gimmick.
is,
I
yeah.
keep falling for it
And
and I'm
also
like,
it's
oh,
the lighting as well, because you've got, supermarkets. Typically, when I look at supermarkets, their plants are either dying, they're an afterthought, people don't water them, take care of them, they're in the wrong location, or they're indoors somewhere, which is just in the middle of nowhere with not the right lighting, things like that. Whereas in garden centres, they're more thought out, their location. You can see that the staff are actually looking after the plants. So yes, I would say they're more hardy, they're more healthier from a garden centre. But also, it really depends. If you're wanting to just trial, and you're in a supermarket and you go, oh, I wonder what that plant would look like in my house, then you can by all means buy one, but they're not probably going to last as long, but they may be cheaper. So you could kind of
yeah.
experiment.
And I also find that like when you look at the roots, they're usually very tight. So the first thing you need to do is like repot them into a bigger pot, because they're
Yes.
just so squashed together. Is there a guideline, or I'm sure you're gonna tell me no, but is there such a thing as like a minimum repotting requirement? Is it once a year? Is it, or does it really depend on the plant?
It really depends on the plant. I
Mm.
mean, you got it straight away there, where as soon as you get a plant, they are normally crammed in. You may even have more than one plant. There may be some where they've actually had two or three plants into one. So you might end up with, three plants for the price of one, which then they'll have their own root systems. They'll need to be carefully separated and potted correctly. Each different type of plant has different types of soil that they would be planted in. So some prefer. I mean, I don't really delve into the science behind soil, but I do know that there are certain types of plants that will require different types of
Yeah,
soil, and normally they're packaged differently. So do your research before
yeah,
buying your plants as well, just to make sure you're getting the right soil for the right plant. But
yeah,
as well, it depends on how quickly you want your plants to flourish and grow, because reverting back to the cheese plant, for example, if you keep it in a smaller pot, then it almost restricts that growth. Whereas if you then continue
yeah,
repotting it
yeah,
every 12 months, for example, you're then looking at, okay, you're allowing it to flourish. And then it's not just about repotting, it's about making sure it's structurally supported, so you can get the bamboo or the garden poles, which you can then tie up to certain plants to make sure that they're not overgrowing their structure, things like that. That's really important. So yeah, it's just do your research, I think, before going out
yeah,
and getting too green fingered.
yeah. Oh, my cat is not leaving me alone today. Can you see that? This is work-life balance. There's no such thing. Um, I've just struck on this. I've been wanting for someone to actually. I've actually inquired with garden centers and plant shops on this, and nobody so far has been willing to accommodate me, which is very inconvenient. But I reckon there is a real market for plant experts to provide a service to come to your house and go, okay, this plant that needs to be by that window. This one needs repotting. This one needs, how often are you watering it? Like way too much. What are you doing, Michelle? Because I tell you what, I would pay for that because the amount of money I spend on buying new plants because others have died and going, oh my god, what am I doing wrong? I have no idea. And even if you look it up on internet and whatever, it's all so generic, the information. Usually it isn't applied to, okay, I live in a 1900 Victorian terrace, and the light is at the front of my house and in the morning and at the back. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
a tailored service where they come to your house for however much
absolutely.
it costs, because that would save you in the long run. I think I'm a genius. I reckon.
Absolutely. Well, funny enough, there's a app that I know it's not the same as having a person, but it's called Picture This, and
Yes. How
you
effective is it? I've been this close to downloading it.
it's
Is
pretty
it
good.
good?
It is pretty good.
Yeah.
I've given it a good run for its money for various different
Okay.
plants, and it's the great thing about it as well. It tells you whether a plant is toxic or not, whether it looks healthy, what that type of plant
Okay.
needs, as in if it's low light, more light, if it needs more watering, for example. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's pretty effective.
What's it called again?
Picture this.
Picture this. Picture
Mm.
this. There you go. Okay, well, there's the tip of the day. I will be downloading that straight after this episode and giving
It's
it a
nothing to
crack.
do with me, by
But
the
I'm
way. I
still
do not
open.
own it. It's just a great app.
No, exactly. We're completely independent. But if you're out there, plant person, and you want to come to my house, I'm open to it. Shoot me an email. Jason, is there anything else that people need to know about plants in general? I've got another question, just last one, if you don't mind, actually, while I've got it. Are some plants superior than others in the health factor in terms of creating, oxygen, carbon dioxide, that conversion, creating that healthy space, filtering toxins, etc. For an indoor plant, what would you say? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, so that's a really great question, actually. So there are various different types of plants that will do different things. So some may be more focused on things like formaldehyde, some may be on, say, benzene, some may be more on releasing oxygen at night. They may be more active in the evening, so they're more beneficial for in bedrooms, for example, because obviously, if you're in a bedroom environment, you could then end up with a lot of CO2 being released from just generally breathing. So, yeah, I think there are different types of plants which can enhance your living experience way more. But
Mm,
also, it goes beyond, obviously, the air filtration is super important, but it goes above and beyond that, where the aesthetic appeal, the actual appeal of bringing nature indoors is so important because just having that connection with nature is just in itself quite a nice mental
yeah.
recharge. And having one, just start with a plant, a potted plant on your desk, can make a massive difference. So yes, absolutely, I think there's lots of different plants for different things depending on what you want to do, as yeah, in your home. But also, it depends on your work life schedule as well, depends on your own occupant behavior as well, how you act in your home. If you've got kids that are running around and playing football in your house, you may want to think about kind of where you're placing your plants. But for example, snake plants are really good at releasing oxygen at night, so they are great to have in a bedroom environment, for example. Or if you've got somewhere where you're
Okay.
relaxing and you spend an evening until the late morning or the early morning. So if you're gaming or watching a film or working, you may want to consider those more active plants at night. So then they can then produce that oxygen and keep you healthier.
Yeah, absolutely. And the The other thing that mentioned, for outside, for trees, etc. Like I think in Sydney, people are often very surprised how many birds there are here, and I think the city's done a great job at keeping a lot of green space, having trees, especially in
Yeah.
the inner city. Um, and in the morning, I'm woken up by these birds called noisy miners, and they're so loud. But I'm in the inner city, and there's kookaburras here. Like
Oh
you
wow.
would, like when I first moved to Australia, I hadn't, like I was flabbergasted. Actually, I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." We've got owls at the local dog park. We've got all sorts of birds. So definitely, you can attract more of those in terms of because you like birds, but also the beautiful noise they make and sometimes screeching sounds, I'd say. But to filter the noise of the city, if you live
Absolutely.
in the inner
Yeah.
west, you've got the flight path noise, etc. But yeah, definitely, it's very effective, very effective.
Yeah. There's
Um,
nothing better than waking up next to, chirping, or unless you've got a bird's nest right outside your window, then you may think differently.
well, you're clearly not familiar with noisy miners. You should look them up on the internet. They
I
are
will do.
the bossiest and noisiest birds in Australia. I think they're fantastic though, but they're incredibly noisy. Um, Jason, I think this has been an incredibly helpful episode for those people who are thinking about purchasing or already own a place. That how important bringing plants into your home and to the outside is really to creating a prettier and nicer environment to live in, but also a healthier one. I think maybe we should create like a checklist of plants that are on our top 10 maybe for people to download and do some research and stuff. And obviously in the transcript you'll see that app and all those plants that Jason has mentioned as well. Thank you so much, Jason, for being here today and giving up your
It's a
time to
pleasure.
speak with me. um, I look forward to speaking with you again very soon. But if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to know more about you and your services, how can they best get in touch?
Yeah, absolutely. So my email is hello@jason-ratcliffe.co.uk. My website is also jason-ratcliffe.co.uk. So check me out on those or on any socials. I'm pretty much everywhere. So yeah, highly active. I look after all of my own direct messages as well. So pretty much it's almost impossible not to be
Excellent.
able to get hold of me.
Also, you have your own podcast. Let's
I
give a plug
do,
for
I
that.
do.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for the natural progression into that plug. That's great. I appreciate that.
Smooth,
So
wasn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So it's called Heal Your Home, and it's available on Spotify, Amazon Prime, everywhere you really want to get all your streaming and podcasts from, and also on YouTube. It's yeah, healyourhomepodcast.co.uk is the URL for it. But basically, it is just me having a natter with various people in the industry about healthy homes and
Mm.
just kind of reliable information where people can just take snippets of it, and hopefully then it just makes their home a little bit more healthier.
Yeah. And, whilst Jason is located in the UK and is obviously talking from the English perspective, so much, the vast majority of his information is completely, transferable to here in Australia and anywhere else in the world where you're listening. So definitely check it out. It's a fantastic podcast. Thank you again, Jason. And thank you for listening. If you have any questions, check me out on hello@buyourside.com.au. I'd love to hear from you and answer your questions. Take care. Bye.